Have you ever wondered how our cities are built and how the roads, bridges, and infrastructure we rely on every day come to life? In this video, we'll dive into the fascinating world of state management and construction, urban planning, and transportation infrastructure. You'll uncover the critical role planning and execution play in shaping our urban environments, and why these decisions impact not just our daily lives, but the future of our communities. Stay until the end to discover how these intricate processes work together and what they mean for the cities of tomorrow. If you haven't yet subscribed, I highly recommend doing so and activating the notification bell to ensure you never miss a video. Your support means a lot to me as we continue to grow our community and reach more people with our content. If you enjoy the topic of this video, please leave a comment with the number 1. If it's not quite your cup of tea, drop a 0 in the comments. Your feedback is crucial in helping me create content that better serves you. Let's get started. As we journey into the twilight of our lives, have you ever paused to ask yourself where true contentment and serenity might lie? Is it in the embrace of family, nestled in the familiar warmth of your children and grandchildren, following the well-trodden path of tradition? Or is there merit in forging your way, safeguarding your independence, and cherishing the freedom of your golden years? The narratives that follow beckon you to reflect deeply, tugging at the heartstrings and inviting you to ponder what it genuinely means to live a fulfilled life in old age. Together, let us listen closely, feel deeply, and explore the unique answers that lead us toward lasting peace and happiness as we grow older. The first story: living with your children. My parents, like many of their generation, always envisioned spending their later years under the roof of one of their sons. The idea of being surrounded by family as they aged gave them comfort. My younger brother, who had a deep sense of duty, even went so far as to choose his life partner based on how well she would integrate into our family, hoping that this would ensure a smooth and harmonious living situation. I watched as he navigated several relationships, only to see them end due to my parents' disapproval. Time and time again, they expressed concerns perhaps the woman wasn't traditional enough, or her homemaking skills didn't meet their expectations. Finally, at 32, my brother married a woman who seemed to check all the boxes. She was kind and respectful, and shared the values that my parents held dear. On the surface, everything appeared ideal. We all believed that this would be the harmonious living arrangement my parents had dreamed of. But soon, the cracks began to show. What began as small irritations grew into deep frustrations. The generational divide, which at first had seemed manageable, became a chasm that neither side could bridge. My parents, particularly my mother, held on to certain traditions like the ritual of gathering for a daily family meal, a symbol of togetherness. My brother and his wife, however, found it increasingly difficult to accommodate this expectation amidst their demanding careers and bustling social life. This seemingly small difference led to growing resentment. My parents, feeling sidelined and disrespected, began to question the very foundation of the arrangement. When my sister-in-law gave birth to their first child, the tension intensified. My mother, rooted in the old ways of childcare, clashed with my sister-in-law, who favored modern, research-based approaches to parenting. What should have been a joyous time turned into a battleground of ideologies. The strain became unbearable. My brother, caught between his wife and his parents, became the unwilling mediator, trying desperately to maintain peace. But the emotional toll was too great. Eventually, after many heated arguments and hurtful words, my brother and his wife decided that the only solution was to move out. While not all families face such extreme conflicts, living under the same roof can expose generational differences that lead to misunderstandings and deep-seated frustrations. What begins as an intention of closeness can sometimes unravel into distance and discontent. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. A different path: Mr. Q's story. Yet, for every story of struggle, there is one of success. Take Mr. Q, for instance. In his household, multi-generational living has blossomed into something truly beautiful. He and his wife live surrounded by their children and grandchildren, 18 in total. But what makes their arrangement work is the balance they've found between togetherness and independence. Though they have their kitchens, the family gathers every evening, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. These moments of connection, simple yet profound, have woven their family into an unbreakable fabric of love and mutual respect. While their household may bustle with activity, it's this very dynamic that brings them peace. Each family member understands the balance between tradition and modernity, between respect for the old ways and the need to adapt to new circumstances. And it's this balance that many seek as they reflect on how best to spend their later years. These stories remind us that there is no one-size-fits-all answer. Whether you choose to embrace the comfort of family or cherish the autonomy of living independently, The key to happiness in our twilight years lies in navigating the delicate dance between closeness and freedom, tradition and change. In the end, it's about finding the path that brings your heart the most peace. Even for those who live far from home, the parents' house often remains a sanctuary, a place where they can find solace and replenish their energy after the wear and tear of daily life. Weekly family gatherings are a cherished tradition, offering moments of reconnection where lives are shared and the bond between generations is strengthened. For Mr. Q, the true gift of living alongside his children and grandchildren lies in the peace that comes from witnessing their happiness. To him, the ability to provide daily guidance and support is a reward that brings profound fulfillment. For many elderly parents, the yearning to live with their children stems from an innate desire for emotional closeness and the comfort that family life brings, especially as their health wanes and their social circles shrink with age. The fear of loneliness in one's later years is not just imagined, it's a reality many face. However, proximity alone cannot heal a strained relationship. If the love and care between family members aren't genuine, simply being close won't nurture a deeper bond. Some older adults find solace in maintaining a certain distance, choosing to live nearby rather than under the same roof. This delicate balance allows them to preserve their independence while staying close enough for frequent visits and care. This arrangement often reduces intergenerational friction while still offering the emotional support that both parents and children need. Ultimately, the decision of where to live in old age is deeply personal, shaped by what brings each individual the greatest sense of peace and contentment. Finding comfort and independence. Mr. V and Mrs. N's story. Take Mr. V and Mrs. N, for example. Though they have two sons, they surprised many by opting not to live with either, despite both sons working and living in Hanoi. As their sons prepared to marry, Mr. V and Mrs. N gently encouraged them to establish their households. Mrs. N, having once navigated life as a daughter-in-law, understood the complexities and tensions that can arise from sharing a home with in-laws. That experience shaped her belief that once a son marries, he should have his own space. 3 years ago, when their younger son married but hadn't yet saved enough to purchase his own home, he asked if he and his wife could stay with his parents temporarily. Mrs. N agreed, but with a stipulation they could stay for no more than 3 months. If they hadn't found a home by then, they would need to rent a place. It's not about being harsh, Mrs. N explained, but about preparing them for the future. She believed that different generations have different ways of living and that prolonged cohabitation could inevitably lead to conflicts. Today, their elder son lives about 10 kilometers away, close enough for convenience, while the younger son bought an apartment right next to his parents' home. On weekends, the family comes together at Mr. V and Mrs. N's house, where they share meals, laughter, and time as a close-knit group. When asked whether they might consider moving in with their sons as they age, Mrs. N responded with confidence, "We plan to sell this 4-story house and use half the money to buy a smaller apartment that's easier to manage. The rest will go toward our retirement. If we become too frail, we'll hire help or consider moving into a senior living community, but we won't be a burden to our children." Mrs. L's story, a life of solitude and contentment. Similarly, Mrs. L has chosen a life of independence, separate from her 2 sons. Both of her married sons have repeatedly urged her to move in with them, to leave behind the large family home that she now occupies alone. Yet Mrs. L remains resolute. Living in the countryside offers her a sense of freedom and connection. "Here I have my friends, my social circle," she explains. "I enjoy my independence. In the city, it's just doors opening and closing all day long with little real interaction." Her sons worry about her being alone, but for Mrs. L, solitude doesn't equate to loneliness. She cherishes the space, the fresh air, and the comfort of her own home. She knows that should she need help, her sons are just a phone call away. But for now, this life of quiet independence suits her perfectly. These stories paint a broader picture of the many different paths to happiness and peace, whether it's living close to family or carving out a life of independence. The choice ultimately depends on personal circumstances and desires. What's most important is that the decision be driven by what truly brings joy, fulfillment, and, above all, peace in the final chapters of life. When Mrs. L visits her sons in the bustling city, she is struck by the relentless routine that defines their lives. The rhythm is always the same. They rise early, hurry off to work, and return home late, tired and absorbed and sad. As soon as they walk through the door, their focus shifts immediately to the glow of screens, their attention captured by computers and phones. The time they spend with her is minimal, reduced to quick greetings exchanged in passing as they rush out or return. In those fleeting moments, she can sense the deep disconnect that city life breeds. It is a world of perpetual motion, where even in the presence of family, the feeling of isolation lingers. For Mrs. L, the city is alienating, full of strangers who hurry by with wary eyes and hurried steps. She feels out of place amid the towering buildings and the constant rush. This isn't my life, she thinks, reflecting on the stark contrast between her tranquil village existence and the hurried chaos her sons have embraced. Let them live their lives as they wish, she says with a quiet sense of acceptance. I'll stay here in the village, where time flows gently and people know each other by name. If illness comes for me, I know they won't be able to care for me every minute of the day. I'll hire someone, and that will be enough. They can visit me when they have the time, and that's all I need. Her attitude reflects a growing reality that many seniors today are beginning to embrace. The era of multi-generational households where parents, children, and grandchildren all live together under one roof is slowly fading. In its place, a new model is emerging, one in which seniors take control of their own lives, choosing independence over tradition. For many like Mrs. L, the thought of relying on their children for day-to-day care doesn't sit well. They prefer to live independently, sometimes in homes nearby, where they can remain self-sufficient but still enjoy the occasional visit from family. The choice to live apart is not about rejecting the love of family, but about recognizing the lifestyle changes that come with age. These parents, long before their children left the nest, prepared themselves for the reality that their children would build lives of their own. They made the conscious decision not to interfere with those lives, but instead to maintain their agency. For them, living independently allows them to continue enjoying life on their terms, dining, traveling, and socializing freely. And when the time comes, they feel confident in their ability to choose the right care, whether that means hiring help or moving to a senior living community. It's a mindset that ensures not only personal fulfillment, but also a more harmonious relationship with their children, who can offer support when needed without feeling burdened. Embracing senior living in a nursing home. Miss M's story is a testament to the strength that comes with choosing one's path in later years. After her husband passed away, she found herself facing a crossroads. Her children assumed she would move in with them, as tradition dictated, and they were ready to welcome her into their homes. But Mrs. M had different ideas. Rather than join the fast-paced, busy lives of her children and grandchildren, she made a decision that shocked everyone. She sold her home and used her pension to move into a private nursing home. Her children were confused, hurt, and even a little ashamed. How could their mother choose to live in a nursing home when she had a family who could take care of her? They worried that others would see this as a sign of neglect, as if they had failed in their duty to care for her. They were afraid that people would judge them for allowing their mother to live apart, especially in a society that values close-knit family ties and the tradition of caring for one's parents in old age. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. But Mrs. M, with her quiet wisdom, calmly explained her decision. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, that her life no longer aligned with the fast-paced, modern world her children were a part of. Living with them, she realized, would only bring discomfort and frustration for both sides. During the day, when her children and grandchildren were out at work and school, she would be left alone in an empty house, with no one to talk to and nothing to do. The urban apartment complex where they lived had no neighbors her age, no familiar faces with whom she could reminisce or share stories. She didn't want to become a silent presence in the background of their busy lives, and she didn't want them to feel obligated to adjust their schedules for her. Instead, Mrs. M chose the nursing home because it offered her something that her children's home could not: companionship. There, she was surrounded by people her age, people who understood her experiences, who shared her memories of a time gone by. Her meals were prepared for her, and she didn't have to worry about the daily chores that had once consumed so much of her energy. Best of all, her children were still a part of her life. They could visit whenever they wanted, but she no longer felt like a burden. She could live her life with dignity, surrounded by friends and caregivers who ensured she was happy and healthy. At first, her children felt pangs of guilt. They questioned whether they had done the right thing in allowing her to make such a bold decision. But as time went on, they saw how vibrant and fulfilled she was in her new community. Mrs. M, far from being lonely, was thriving. On holidays, she would spend a few weeks with her family, enjoying the company of her children and grandchildren, before returning to the comfort of his undercurrent and in the comfort of her nursing home. When she visited friends who still lived with their children, she would share her experience, encouraging them to consider the same path if it felt right for them. For her, this was not about abandoning tradition, but about finding a new way to live that respected both her independence and her children's busy lives. Mr. V's story: seeking freedom in a nursing home. Mr. V, now 70 years old, made a similar decision, but his path was marked by more internal conflict. After his wife passed away, Mr. V found himself alone in their rural home. His only son had moved to the city, where he had married and started a family of his own. At first, Mr. V planned to stay in the countryside, where he had lived all his life. But his children insisted that he move in with them, reasoning that it would be easier for everyone if he lived nearby. Though reluctant, Mr. V agreed, hoping that life in the city would not be too different from the quiet existence he had known. But after nearly 2 years of living with his son's family, Mr. V realized that something was missing. His days were long and monotonous, spent mostly in front of the television or wandering around the house. He had little interaction with his son or grandchildren, who were always busy with work and school. The fast pace of city life didn't suit him, and he felt as if he were living in a gilded cage, comfortable but trapped. His rural home, with its open fields and familiar faces, felt like a distant memory. After much contemplation, Mr. V decided to use his pension to move into a senior living community, where he could find the sense of freedom and companionship he had lost. His son was initially upset, feeling as though his father had rejected his offer of care. But Mr. V explained that this was about finding happiness and independence, not about distancing himself from his family. In the nursing home, he had the freedom to interact with people his age, participate in activities that brought him joy, and live life on his terms. He could visit his son and grandchildren whenever he wanted, but he no longer felt like a guest in their home. Mr. V's choice, like Mrs. M's, reflects a growing recognition among seniors that the best way to preserve family relationships is sometimes to live apart. In their senior living communities, both Mr. V and Mrs. M found not only care but a new sense of purpose, surrounded by peers who shared their experiences and understood the challenges of aging. Their stories highlight the importance of embracing change, even in old age, and finding new ways to live that respect both personal freedom and the bonds of family. For both Mrs. M and Mr. V, choosing a nursing home wasn't about rejecting family, but about ensuring that they could live with dignity and independence. They understood that living together with their children might not bring the closeness or fulfillment they sought. Instead, they found that by living separately, they could maintain stronger, healthier relationships with their families while also enjoying the freedom to shape their own lives. Their stories reflect a broader trend among seniors, a desire to live out their golden years with autonomy, purpose, and a deep sense of personal fulfillment. Struggling with Parkinson's disease, Mr. V began to feel the weight of his condition more each day. His tremors were worsening, and simple tasks became increasingly difficult. One evening, while sitting alone in front of the TV, he happened upon a program discussing nursing homes. The thought intrigued him. It seemed like a place where people with similar struggles were not only cared for but could also enjoy a full life. Later that night, he went online and explored his options. After researching extensively, he came to a surprising realization: a nursing home might just be the environment he needed to feel whole again. There, he could receive the care he needed, the company he craved, and the peace of mind that had been eluding him. The next day, he approached his children with the idea. Although they were initially resistant, worried about societal judgment and the perception that they were abandoning their father, they eventually agreed to let him try it for a few months. To their amazement, Mr. V's health improved soon after moving into the nursing home. Surrounded by people his age and cared for by professionals, he thrived. His symptoms seemed more manageable, and he regained a sense of independence. He was no longer burdened by daily chores like cooking and cleaning, which had become nearly impossible due to his condition. His days were now filled with conversation, activities, and care, tailored specifically to his needs. After seeing how his life improved, Mr. V decided to make the move permanent. His military pension was more than enough to cover the costs, and his children, who once worried about societal judgment, now felt relieved. They knew that their father was in a place where he could receive proper care without the overwhelming responsibility falling on their shoulders. They visited him often, and each visit brought peace, knowing that he was happy, healthy, and, most importantly, content. There was a time when the idea of sending elderly parents to a nursing home was seen as a form of abandonment, a shameful departure from family values. Families feared the judgment of others, who might see it as a betrayal of the duty children owed to their parents. In many cultures, this duty was considered sacred. Parents raised their children, and in return, children were expected to care for their parents in old age. But times are changing. More and more seniors are now choosing to live in nursing homes, not because their children don't care, but because these communities can provide them with a quality of life that they may not find elsewhere. Some seniors, like Mr. V, are dealing with medical conditions that require specialized care. Others live alone and feel the weight of isolation growing heavier with each passing year. Still, others have children who are simply too busy, caught up in the demands of modern life, to provide the kind of daily care their aging parents need. And then some seek a peaceful, enriching environment where they can enjoy their later years without burdening their families. For many, nursing homes offer a solution that balances care with independence, providing the peace and comfort that older adults deserve. What matters most is that these seniors are happy with their decisions. For Mr. V, the nursing home wasn't a place of exile, it was a home where he could find companionship, care, and peace. His children no longer felt the guilt that had initially plagued them. Instead, they saw their father living a dignified and fulfilling life, free from the struggles that had once weighed him down. Dear friends, as we look ahead to the later chapters of life, the question of where to spend those years becomes deeply personal. Each family is unique, and each situation brings its own set of challenges and decisions. Some will choose to live with their children, embracing the comfort of family bonds. Others, like Mr. V, may find joy in an independent living arrangement or a senior community that caters to their needs. The essence of senior living is not about where you live, but how you live. It is about finding joy, maintaining health, and staying true to the values that have guided your family throughout life. Living with your children, for some, can provide the emotional closeness that brings comfort in old age. For others, maintaining independence, whether alone, nearby, or in a nursing home, can offer the freedom to live as they wish, without feeling like a burden. The traditional expectation that children must care for their parents at home no longer needs to be the only option. Parents and children alike can find peace in alternative arrangements, knowing that love and care do not depend on proximity. In the end, senior life should not be about dependence or guilt, but about finding peace, joy, and satisfaction in each day. Whether you live with your children independently or in a nursing home, the most important thing is to live the life that brings you the most happiness. Holding on to family values and personal dignity doesn't mean sacrificing your needs. Aging is not the final chapter, but the beginning of a new one, a chapter filled with meaning, where you can savor every moment with a sense of fulfillment and contentment. As you take control of your journey, remember that this is your life, and it's up to you to live it in a way that feels right for you. If the stories of Mr. V and others inspire you and motivate you to take action in shaping your future, we would love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts by commenting 9 if you found these stories uplifting, or comment 0 if they did not resonate with you. Your feedback is invaluable, and we deeply appreciate the time you've taken to reflect on these important issues with us. Thank you for being part of this journey. Part 2. If your spouse passes away, first 3 things to say no to. Have you ever stopped to wonder what life would look like if your spouse were no longer there, sharing the small, intimate moments that make up your days? It's a haunting thought most of us push aside, preferring to believe that our love will endure forever. But life, in its unpredictable nature, often throws challenges at us when we least expect them. One of the most painful experiences anyone can endure is losing a partner, the person who shared your dreams, your fears, your joys, and your sorrows. The loss of that connection can leave you feeling utterly adrift, as if the very ground beneath you has disappeared. How do you continue when half of your heart is gone? Where do you find the strength to face a world that no longer feels whole? These are not easy questions, and for many, the answers don't come quickly. But what if I told you that even in the depths of your grief, there is a way not only to survive, but to find new meaning, independence, and even joy? Today, we will explore the remarkable journeys of 3 individuals who have navigated the turbulent waters of loss. Each of them faced the darkest days of their lives and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than they ever thought possible. Their stories offer hope, healing, and a way forward for those who are left behind. The first thing to acknowledge is that life itself is beautifully unpredictable. You can never truly know how far the people you love will walk with you. As much as we wish we could control fate, the truth is we can't. Miyazaki, a wise philosopher, once said, "Life is like a train ride. Each person is only able to accompany you for part of the journey. When they must disembark, you should be grateful for the time they spent with you. And if someone can stay for the entire ride, your gratitude should be even deeper." This idea speaks to the bittersweet reality of love and life, that every relationship has its own time and season. Whether it lasts for decades or is cut short by unforeseen circumstances, it leaves an indelible mark on your soul. To share your life with a partner through the highs and lows, from youth to old age, is a gift that many cherish. But not all love stories last as long as we hope. Some are tragically interrupted, as illness or accidents steal our loved ones away before we're ready to say goodbye. The sudden emptiness that fills your home when your spouse is gone is profound. It's not just the absence of their presence, but the loss of the life you built together. Their laughter, their touch, the daily routines you once took for granted, they all vanish, leaving behind a haunting silence. The bed feels too big, and the house too quiet. You feel like a ship without a compass, drifting aimlessly in the vast sea of grief. In those first moments of loss, it feels as though the world has stopped. Time, which once moved effortlessly, now seems frozen, trapping you in a never-ending loop of sorrow. But while your world may feel like it's come to a halt, life outside continues relentlessly. The harsh reality is that time does not pause for anyone, no matter how deep your pain. Days will turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and eventually you'll be faced with a choice. Do you allow your grief to consume you, or do you begin the slow and painful process of rebuilding your life? Here's the difficult truth: the person you loved and lost cannot come back. No amount of wishing, no amount of tears can change that. And while this truth is one of the hardest to accept, it's also the first step toward healing. To live a life that honors your spouse's memory, you must begin to say no to certain things that can keep you trapped in a cycle of despair. There are 3 key things you must learn to refuse if you want to move forward, and they come from the hard-earned wisdom of those who have faced loss head-on. First, say no to isolating yourself from the world. It's natural, in the early stages of grief, to want to withdraw. The pain can feel too personal and too overwhelming to share with others. You may feel like no one else could understand the depth of your loss, but isolating yourself only deepens the wound. Surrounding yourself with people, family, friends, or even support groups can provide the emotional lifeline you need to begin healing. Connection is a vital part of recovery. Even when you feel like you have nothing to give, allowing others to be there for you can offer comfort in ways you might not expect. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Second, say no to clinging to guilt or regrets. It's common to replay the last moments you had with your spouse, wondering if there was something more you could have done, something you missed or could have said. Maybe you regret not spending more time together or not expressing your love more openly. But holding on to guilt will only prolong your suffering. Your spouse wouldn't want you to live with such a heavy burden. Instead, focus on the love you shared, the memories you created, and how they enriched your life. Let go of the what-ifs and embrace the beauty of what was. Third, say no to abandoning your sense of self. When you lose a spouse, it's easy to feel like a part of you died with them. After all, you spent so many years intertwined, your identity was wrapped up in the life you built together. But losing your spouse doesn't mean losing yourself. You are still here, and you still have a life to live. Now is the time to rediscover who you are, not just as a partner, but as an individual. What are your passions, your dreams, your desires? Finding new purpose and joy in life doesn't diminish the love you had, it honors it. It's a testament to the strength of your bond, that even in their absence, you continue to grow and thrive. So, while the journey through grief is long and arduous, there is hope at the end of it. The stories of those who have survived this kind of loss remind us that life, though changed forever, does not end with the death of a spouse. There is still beauty to be found, joy to be experienced, and love to be given. By saying no to isolation, guilt, and losing yourself, you open the door to a future that is not just about surviving, but about truly living once more. In time, you may even find that you can carry your spouse's memory with you, not as a weight of sorrow, but as a source of strength. 1. Immersing in excessive grief for too long. Imagine losing the person who has been your anchor, your confidant, and your companion for most of your life. The void they leave behind is indescribable, a gaping hole where love, laughter, and shared memories once resided. The weight of that absence can feel unbearable, as if life itself has been drained of its meaning. Callista knows this feeling all too well. At 67, she faced the devastating loss of her husband, the man she had built a life with. Suddenly, she found herself standing at a crossroads, uncertain of how to move forward. How do you continue when the love of your life is no longer there? Callista's journey from the depths of grief to a place of renewed purpose is a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. Her story is not just one of sorrow, but of resilience, hope, and the courage to live again. Callista's experience is a poignant reminder that while grief is a natural and necessary response to loss, immersing oneself in it for too long can consume your soul. She shares her story with a raw honesty that resonates deeply. When I was 64, my husband passed away. I still find it hard to accept. In those first days, I felt like a shell of a person, barely existing. I cried myself to sleep every night, and during the day I wandered through life, feeling like a ghost in my own home. The double bed where we once lay together felt too big, too empty, and the silence was deafening. I thought I couldn't go on. But then I'd look at our old photos, the ones where we were so happy, smiling and laughing. I knew then that he wouldn't want me to waste away like this. My tears couldn't bring him back. The best way to honor his memory was to live well, to find joy in life again. That's when I decided to push through the sadness, for him and myself. Callista's words are a reminder that, no matter how overwhelming grief may seem, we owe it to ourselves and to those we have lost to keep moving forward. Yes, the separation of life and death is perhaps the most painful experience a person can endure, but the living must continue. The beauty of life is that it goes on, even after heartbreak. The past, with all its happy memories, is important to cherish, but we must not let it trap us. To dwell endlessly on what once was is to deny the beauty that still exists in the present and the hope that lies in the future. Callista came to understand that grief is not a place to live, it is a process to walk through. And while the journey is painful, there is light at the end. Living well, she realized, is the only way to give peace to the one who has passed and to find peace for yourself. In the face of loss, it's essential to stay grounded and take care of oneself. Callista's story teaches us that self-care, both physical and emotional, is a crucial part of healing. It's easy to let grief overwhelm you, but allowing it to consume your life only deepens the pain. By staying calm and mindful, you can begin the slow process of healing. Take care of your health, nurture your spirit, and make room for hope to bloom once again. Adjusting your mindset, regaining your confidence, and rediscovering your independence are steps toward living a fulfilled life, even after a loss. Callista encourages others to embrace the simplicity of life's pleasures in their journey of healing. Cheer yourself up. She advises, eat when you're hungry, rest when you're tired, take leisurely walks through the park, and allow yourself to enjoy the small things again. Don't rely on others to pull you through, learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Embrace solitude with grace and wisdom. Let your loneliness become a quiet companion, like sipping a glass of aged wine, rich with the depth of your lived experiences. There is beauty in solitude when it is approached with acceptance rather than resistance. Learning to enjoy your own company. To find peace in quiet moments can turn loneliness into a time of self-discovery. Callista reminds us that, though we may long for the past, there is still joy to be found in the present. Reach out to friends when you need companionship, and allow yourself to laugh again. Talk openly about your feelings, share memories, and embrace the companionship of those who care for you. In doing so, you'll discover that even in your later years, life can still hold moments of happiness and fulfillment. Ultimately, Callista's journey is a testament to the fact that grief, while all-encompassing at first, does not have to define the rest of your life. It's a part of the human experience, but it is not the end of the story. There is always room for new chapters, new experiences, and new joys, even after the most profound loss. You can learn to carry your grief with grace and move forward, not by forgetting the person you loved, but by honoring them with the way you continue to live. In time, as Callista found, you can rebuild your life around the loss. The pain may never fully go away, but it will soften, and in its place, you will find strength, resilience, and a deep appreciation for the life that remains. Living well, she discovered, is not just a way to survive after loss, it's a way to thrive. Dealing with the loss of a lifelong partner is undeniably one of the most painful and challenging experiences a person can endure. Callista's story serves as a poignant illustration of why discussing and understanding this topic is so crucial. Grief, as her journey reveals, is a universal emotion, one that transcends age, background, and culture. It doesn't discriminate. Instead, it unites us in the shared experience of loss and sorrow. Her story reminds us that the overwhelming sadness and loneliness that accompany the death of a loved one are normal, deeply human responses. This recognition can be profoundly comforting for those in mourning, offering reassurance that their grief is not something they must carry alone. It connects them to others who have endured similar pain and allows them to feel less isolated in their struggle. Callista's experience also highlights the vital role of resilience in coping with grief. Life has a way of introducing us to unexpected, sometimes devastating changes, but her ability to rise from the ashes of despair to find new meaning in life offers an inspiring message. It tells us that while grief may initially feel all-consuming, it doesn't have to be permanent. Her story provides hope to those who are grappling with loss, serving as a beacon of light in a time of profound darkness. It reassures them that although the pain may never entirely vanish, it is possible to rebuild, to rediscover joy, and to live a life filled with purpose once again. Moreover, Callista's journey underscores the importance of self-care and mental health during times of profound grief. It is all too easy to neglect one's well-being when drowning in sorrow. Yet, Callista made the intentional choice to prioritize her health, find joy in the small things, and maintain her connections with friends. These practical steps were her lifeline, and they can be for others as well. Her actions remind us that self-care is not selfish, it is essential for survival, especially during times of loss. Her story encourages those who are grieving to seek support, to care for themselves physically and emotionally, and to remember that embracing life again is not a betrayal of the loved one they lost. In addition, her story speaks to the profound role that memories play in the healing process. Callista found solace in revisiting old photos and reliving the happy moments she shared with her husband. These cherished memories became a source of comfort, a way to honor his presence in her life, while allowing her to keep moving forward. The act of reflecting on positive memories is a powerful tool for coping with loss. It enables those who grieve to keep their loved ones close, not in a way that traps them in the past, but in a manner that empowers them to live fully in the present. Perhaps most importantly, Callista's experience teaches the delicate but essential balance between remembering the past and embracing the future. Grief often makes it difficult to see beyond the immediate pain, but her story illustrates that, while it's natural and necessary to mourn, it's equally important to seize a mourn. Living in the present and looking forward to the future doesn't mean forgetting those we've lost. It means finding a way to carry them with us as we continue our journey. This balance is key to living a rich and meaningful life, even after experiencing a loss that once seemed insurmountable. 2. Over-relying on children for the rest of your life. Have you ever wondered what life might look like for elderly parents who spend their later years living with their grown children? Is it a time of comfort, joy, and togetherness, or does it come with its own set of challenges that were never anticipated? For many, the idea of growing old surrounded by family seems like a natural progression, a continuation of the care and love that has always been shared. But sometimes the reality of this arrangement reveals hidden complexities that challenge both generations in unexpected ways. In today's story, Mrs. Amber, a 65-year-old widow, shares her deeply personal journey of living with her daughter's family after the loss of her husband and her eventual decision to embrace living alone. Her experience speaks to the importance of independence in later life and serves as a powerful reminder that true happiness can often be found within oneself, even when the path to that realization is fraught with emotional trials. Stay with us as we explore Mrs. Amber's story and uncover why sometimes the best company you can have in your golden years is your own. Mrs. Amber reflects on her experience with a mixture of sadness and hard-earned wisdom. After my husband passed away, I moved in with my daughter and lived with. I believed it was only natural parents raise their children, and in return, the children look after their parents in old age. It seemed like an unspoken agreement, a part of life's cycle. I had given my life to my family, so it felt right that my daughter would care for me in return. But over the years, I realized that what felt natural to me wasn't necessarily the best for either of us. Mrs. Amber's story reveals a common expectation among parents that as they age, the support they once gave their children will naturally be reciprocated. She had spent years raising her daughter, nurturing and guiding her. And when her husband passed away, it seemed only fitting that her daughter would be there for her. When her son-in-law invited her to live with them after her grandson was born, she accepted with gratitude, feeling that this was where she was meant to be. In her heart, she saw her grandson as a reincarnation of her late husband, and in her grief, caring for him became a way to fill the void left by her loss. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. I devoted myself completely to my grandson, Mrs. Amber continues. I helped with the housework, looked after the baby, and tried to make myself useful in every way I could. In many ways, it gave me purpose during a time when I felt adrift. But as the years passed, I began to notice something shifting. My presence, which had once been welcomed and appreciated, started to feel more like a burden to them. Mrs. Amber's words highlight a difficult truth sometimes. Living with grown children can create an unintentional strain. The once natural bond between parent and child can become complicated as roles shift. While Mrs. Amber was grateful for the security of living with her daughter's family, she also started to sense a growing tension. Her daughter and son-in-law's lives were evolving, and Mrs. Amber found herself feeling out of place, as if she no longer fit into the rhythm of their household. What began as a mutual support system had quietly morphed into a situation where Mrs. Amber's efforts went from being appreciated to being taken for granted. The dynamic had changed, and the unspoken expectations weighed heavily on both sides. I started noticing little things. Mrs. Amber recalls the way my daughter would sigh when I asked a question, or how my son-in-law seemed annoyed when I offered to help. It wasn't that they didn't care about me, but I began to realize that I was intruding on their lives. I thought I was helping, but it felt like I was just in the way. It became clear to me that this wasn't what I wanted for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be a burden. And so, with the mixture of heartbreak and courage, Mrs. Amber made the difficult decision to live on her own once again. She realized that while the idea of relying on her children seemed like the easiest and most comforting option, it wasn't bringing her the fulfillment she had hoped for. Instead, it was leading to a growing resentment on both sides. This awakening led her to one of the most important realizations of her life. True happiness and peace come from within, not from relying on others. Moving out was one of the hardest things I've ever done, she admits, but it was also the best decision I could have made. I had to learn to enjoy my own company, to take pride in my independence again. I didn't want to spend my golden years feeling like a guest in my own family's home. I wanted to feel free, to live on my terms, and to find happiness within myself. Her decision to live alone wasn't about cutting ties with her daughter or rejecting their relationship. It was about reclaiming her sense of self and finding a new kind of freedom. Mrs. Amber now finds joy in the little things, taking long walks, reading, and reconnecting with old friends. She still visits her daughter regularly and spends time with her grandson, but now, the time they spend together is cherished rather than strained. Mrs. Amber's journey reminds us that while it's natural to want to rely on our children as we age, it's important not to lose ourselves in the process. Maintaining a sense of independence is crucial for emotional well-being. Over-reliance on others, even our closest family members, can lead to feelings of helplessness, resentment, and frustration. By embracing her independence, Mrs. Amber discovered a renewed sense of purpose and a more fulfilling way of living. Her story is a powerful example of the importance of self-reliance in later life. It teaches us that while family is a vital part of our lives, we must also cultivate our strength and resilience. Finding happiness within ourselves is key to living a rich and fulfilling life, even in our later years. Mrs. Amber's experience is a reminder that sometimes the best company we can keep is our own. As we conclude Mrs. Amber's heartfelt story, it's clear that life in our later years is not just about where we live, but how we choose to live. Mrs. Amber's journey from dependence to rediscovering her independence teaches us valuable lessons about self-reliance, personal growth, and finding peace within ourselves. So, what have you learned from her experience? Take a moment to reflect and share one key lesson that resonates with you and how you plan to bring it into your own life in the comments below. If you found value in this video, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. And while you're here, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our future inspiring stories. Thank you for watching.